Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is a fantastic Friday up here for you because Cowboys-Eagles last night, what a game. And we got Chiefs-Chargers tonight and a whole slate of all of your weekend games all through Sunday and then the Monday Night Football game. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Chase joining us. Chase, what a game that was last night.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, somebody next week needs to run the books in Vegas because these were just, I couldn't even believe the bet line after last night. And I'm like, division rival, highly emotional game on the road. And you give the Eagles 8.5? Like, what kind of highway robbery is this? Like, I never understood it, but what a game it was. By the way, Dak looked good. He looked like his own healthy self. But
yeah, he definitely did. And I think that offense needs a little work in terms of like their run pass, or they're like running and then passing. Like, I feel like he relies too much heavily on CD. He needs to learn to like check the ball down more, or needs to learn to target George Pickens, because there was that 4th and 3 play. You tried to take a deep shot downfield with CD when you could have easily had Jake Ferguson up the middle. You could have checked it down to Javonte, and kudos to Javonte coming back from, you know, the injuries that he's had and playing in Denver. Like, he did pretty well there. Now he's doing great with Dallas. And the fact that CD puts all the blame on his shoulders for that loss because of the 4 drop passes he had in the fourth quarter, I do think that the Cowboys offense looked good and their defense, you know, was not bad. They were shutting down the secondary, or shutting down the wide receivers all night long. Devontae had 1 catch. AJ Brown had 1 catch.
Yep.
Jahan Dotson had the 1 catch for a long play, but that was it. They were mostly getting gashed in the run game and everything. And I think that's the one thing that Jerry Jones has stressed that they need to do is stop the run.
So let's talk about it. Philadelphia, let's start with them first, because to me, like I said, I was not a fan of the line in being at 8.5. I told people, be careful of that line. I don't know what, and look, I respect my hometown. Like I've always respected my roots, but I felt like week 1 was so unpredictable for them that they couldn't even figure out these bet lines. And that's where the 8.5, highly emotional in Philadelphia, world champs, like they were obviously feeling themselves. But Philadelphia, what was hard about this game, in which I knew that this was going to come down to this point, was that if you watched, Dallas looked much more buttoned up than they have ever been. And I know it's not a knock, and it's not even throwing shade at Micah, but the difference of it was you saw when they got newly acquired Kenny Clark, he actually ended up playing up his role. And it's going to help everybody up and onto the defensive front. And you know what? The difference maker of that was that whole defensive front for the Cowboys shut down Saquon down to 70 rushing yards, which is, you would usually see Saquon get more than that. But the difference maker, and this is where I got to give my kudos and my respects to Jalen Hurts, because everything in Philadelphia was going bat crazy. Okay, you got the whole crowd chanting out Dallas sucks. You got Jalen Carter spitting on Dak, which we'll get to a little bit on that and what that's going to look like per the suspension. But Jalen Hurts, the most level-headed franchise quarterback amongst a whole plethora of noise in that entire stadium. Like, Jalen Hurts played his game. And what I compare this to was after last night, you didn't see Jalen pass a ton, and anybody that took Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown with throwing the ball, nice try. They definitely messed up your parlays. But here's the thing about it. Jalen is an improviser, okay? He's smart, understands when pressure is thrown in his face, and he's going to improvise whether throwing or running. And what Dallas needed to clean up, because the first half, I mean, there were some spurts that I thought was pretty good against the run, but when you left lanes open for someone like Jalen Hurts, who can clearly run the ball and score in the end zone to give Philadelphia these leads, that's the stuff Dallas needed to clean up. Second half was actually pretty good. I'll get to Dallas in a second. But Philadelphia and Jalen Hurts, what I compare Jalen is I think Jalen on the field in football looks like Russell Westbrook. Because to me, Russell was an improviser. Sure, he didn't have a strong arm than what Jalen does when it comes to shooting threes. Couldn't really hit the behind the arc stuff. But he was athletic, speedster, and can improvise and attack when the lanes are open. And that's what Jalen Hurts does. But to be level-headed in that game and just basically seeing everything happen around him is why I respect what Jalen Hurts does. And whether you do or you don't have Jalen in your top 5 or top 10, I wouldn't consider Jalen to be top 5 in my opinion, but I think top 10, the only thing about it is nobody looks at him as just a standalone pocket present quarterback. They look at him as he is the improvising quarterback that can run, throw, and leads his team to victories. It's the experience part. That's why Jalen doesn't really get mixed up in all the noise. He doesn't. And so I just look at that game like Jalen took control, and Philadelphia in a highly emotional game, just everything was all happening. And there were some worries when they started up the game was the corner too, because when Adoree Jackson was up there, he looked awful. And when I thought about Jacorian Bennett, there were some spurts where I thought he looked pretty decent. But corner 2 is going to be the problem for Philadelphia. I mean, scuffles, and not to mention some of those spots where they've let through up onto the run game. The minute that Jalen Carter ends up coming out of the game, they got gashed. And it happens. Week 1, unpredictable. That's why I was like, don't fall for that 8.5. I told people take the dog because I just have a whole bunch of Rottweilers on leashes ready to be unleashed this weekend. And I did not like that line whatsoever, but Dallas covered. That's all that I cared about. Now I'm going to switch and focus to Dallas, okay? Because this Dallas team, compared to the other Dallas team with Micah Parsons, okay, this team offensively looked buttoned up. Dak looks like the absolute healthy version of himself. He's slinging the ball left and right. It's not his fault that CeeDee Lamb costed 3 drops in the game. But CeeDee in some of those spurts, he got receptions, getting Cowboys down up to field position, and that was what was the difference maker. So when Micah, the whole distraction, okay, this was what it was all about. The distraction from Micah is because Micah's out there doing his own thing. He's not quite mentally invested with the Cowboys, and he's got his own podcast and all the rest of it. They called that a distraction. And then not to mention these tours they would have in Dallas, and the Cowboys weren't even focused. And so that was the part that really drove Cowboy players crazy, is there's so many distractions. But in the midst of this, with one of your perennial edge rushers who goes to Green Bay, which will improve the Packers to a certain extent, Dak needed to be the leader, and he needed to step up. And what do you know? I watched a bunch of those throws. Didn't quite go on the over bet that I had in the prop bet. But however, Dak looks healthy, and Dak is taking control. By the way, that Tyler Booker kid from Alabama, boy, did he look like he was really good on some of those coverages. So Dak is in the offense is going to be fine. This is the best version of Javonte Williams I've seen in the 4 years he's been in Denver. Like, he's healthy, scores twice. If CeeDee Lamb did not drop that deep pass that would have gotten the Cowboys up and up field, they would have won the game. And so this is the best version of Dallas I think I've seen in a while. And Dak, we know there's going to be parts where Dak may end up throwing more, but he does have an offense around him. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. These guys are going to connect. It's week 1. I slow it down. But the only thing that really does need improvements, which they improved on the run, but not quite up and on the passes. That's the part where Dallas really needed to take control of that. They've limited some of Philadelphia's their weapons, but ultimately it was all a dogfight at the end of it. But Dallas wasn't going into that thing looking embarrassed. And that's where I think Dak Prescott, when that whole thing happened with Jalen Carter, I don't care who spit first and where they spat at. Okay, I don't care. The thing is that it got into Jalen Carter's head, and he just really spits up at Dak in front of the official, where everybody, it's even in the cameras. You can't even go through every angle and say, oh, yeah, I didn't see it. Everybody saw it. It was in their faces. It was on television. You couldn't get away with that. And once that became the difference maker, Jalen Carter was out of the game, and that changed it. It changed the way that you looked at that front of Philadelphia. But week 1 is always unpredictable. The Cowboys are actually going to be in pretty good shape. I'm not worried about offensively. I think Jason McIntyre made a great point on the herd today where this could be the Cincinnati Bengals of the NFC, where the Cowboys' offensive plethora is going to be really, really good because Brian Schottenheimer is actually pretty clever as an offensive coordinator. There's probably a few things that needs to be cleaned up, but defensively, I feel like could be a liability for the Cowboys down the stretch. Run defense, I don't think will be a problem, but this is also part of the reason why you got the picks. This is part of the reason why that you ended up trading away Micah, and now this is your time to prove to a lot of people in the next 3 years that Micah trade actually turned out to be a good thing for Dallas with their chemistry, with the offensive consistency, defensively. That's where you're going to see the difference. And I think Dallas is in a pretty good position to prove that. So, again, week 1, it is what it is. I'm not worried about it. All I am a little bit concerned of is just parts of that defense. So, Chase, like I said, I think with Dak, like, the only thing that I give Dak a lot of credit for is that the fact that when you needed a leader, Dak was willing to step into this spot. I don't care who spit first. But the fact of the matter is that Dak wasn't showing any emotion. He's just standing there. You blatantly are right there in front of the ref, and the entire crowd is watching it up and onto the screen. And you take out Jalen Carter, which then changed the whole game plan against the run. That's why I think that was the question mark for everybody when it came to Brian Schottenheimer. Is Brian Schottenheimer could be that motivational and yet kind of clever coach in a sense.
The thing is, would the run game be as effective as it was for the Cowboys if Jalen Carter was in?
Question mark. Yes, that would be the question, because if Jalen Carter was up there, I would say that run game probably wouldn't have the night that it did.
Nope.
They probably would have gotten less than 100 rushing yards altogether as a team. And that would have caused Dak to throw more. Because I don't even think Dak even threw that many. But those passes, Chase, they were accurate.
Like 17 for 24 or something like that.
Yeah, so he only threw 24 times. But these were not just any ordinary passes. These were accurate. These were on the spot. These were exactly on the positions when he made progressions. It's just unfortunate CeeDee Lamb only dropped the ball 3 times.
Well, that and Jake Ferguson too, because you remember that play that he had up the middle where it was a touch to Jake Ferguson. If Dak throws that ball just slightly a little bit further, Jake Ferguson, it's in his hands. He's falling in the end zone. He catches the ball, and they go up, and they possibly win the game at the end there. So, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think the Eagles are going to be as good as everybody thinks that they are because it's that Super Bowl hangover. Mm-hmm. Usually the very next year that a team has success, they normally do average the following year after the Super Bowl because it's that hangover, not to mention a new offensive coordinator and everything. You're going to see like a stagnant offense a little bit to start with, and then maybe it'll pick up towards the end, but by then it'll probably be too late.
Yeah, and again, that's why I think Jason McIntyre made the great point on the Herd earlier today, where I think this could be the Cincinnati Bengals of the NFC because offensively they'll be clever. But I think there is going to be points where the offense might be bailing the defense in some of those areas. But that's where defense really has to show out themselves.
Yeah, because
that's Deron Bland
holding yesterday.
There was a lot of holding, yeah. You know what? I'm actually kind of surprised that even with Jordan Mailata, he had 2 calls that weren't even called on him. Like, did you see some of those 2 holds? He was holding.
A lot of holding and a lot of pass interference because, like, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and a whole bunch of others were just constantly pass interference. I'm like, dude, you could see plain as day that you were grabbing their jersey, grabbing their arm beforehand.
Yeah.
Like,
and you know what though? How smart was Dak to throw that ball to George Pickens, who was clearly trying to go up for that ball against Quinyon Mitchell, and drew the flag, drew the penalty. Because you're trying to get your team up on field position. But yeah, that's where I think usually, and this always happens with Vic Fangio defenses, is they tend to be rough the first 4 weeks. Then they find their consistency. So even with that win,
or they usually tend to do good like the first year or 2 that he's there, and then they fall off after the 3rd or 4th year.
Yes, and so that's why even with last night looking as pretty as it was, like I said, that 8.5 was such a trap that I was just like a division rival on the road. And Dallas played buttoned up like that.
You got a division rival tonight, man. It's going to be an interesting one.
But you know what? This is favorable because it's 3.5.
And I like about this. Omarion Hampton to score 2 touchdowns, but Patrick Mahomes to throw 3 because I've got them both on my fantasy. So
well, if you saw our triple play prop bet from our partners up at Payday Fantasy, I like I said, I got Herbert probably throwing for less than 233 yards because that's going to be more of a control game. And I've got Ladd getting over 5.5 receptions and Keenan Allen coming away with a touchdown.
Is Omarion the starting running back or is it?
Yes,
Najee?
So they are planning to start him to be the bell cow, and Najee is active and he will start up that. We'll talk more about that here after the break. Because there is a lot to really think about with this Chiefs-Chargers game. Some people have it as a stay-away game just because on neutral field, nobody knows exactly what to expect with both these teams. But I know Jim Harbaugh is going to be seeing red. I hate to bring this up to you, Chase, but I feel like this atmosphere could be similar to what Jim Harbaugh's atmosphere of what he brought in Ann Arbor against Ohio State. Because that often when a game like that goes down, it's best coaching match wins. That's really what it comes down to with both these teams. So we'll talk more about that here after the break. Well, like we said, guys, our partners at Payday Fantasy. You'll see that every Thursday. You got it tonight up on Friday. Check it out on our social medias, Sundays and Mondays. So every time there's always going to be a triple play prop bet with our partners at Payday Fantasy because Payday Fantasy is your #1 source for player prop pick'ems. All right? Select the player. Very simple. Select the player. Select the over-unders of their projected stat and go on and win and get paid. That's all Payday Fantasy is all big up for, and they got plenty of contests for you to join in on the action all season long to get you in on the best prop pick'ems all throughout the NFL season and even for other sports as well. Check out all that you want to see here on paydayfantasy.com. And also, best of all, with our partnership with Payday Fantasy, you will get 100% deposit matchup bonus to $100 just by using promo code SNAKE. Remember, and actually, Chase, it's playable in Ohio. So you can get a lot of people up over there, refer them to the game, and get them signed up here at paydayfantasy.com.
Nice.
So sign up, play, and get paid with Payday Fantasy.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
We're about close to about another 45 minutes here away from Friday Night Football in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We're all about it here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. I'm really excited about this game for a few reasons, because we just watched last night a division rival between the Cowboys and Eagles, and the Cowboys came in and played buttoned up against Philly, even though that the Eagles took away that game at home. And you know what? You're better off to show up in your home crowd. So that was what was the difference maker. But this game in Sao Paulo, Brazil, neutral site. Last year when we got the Eagles and Packers, it was a tough field to play on. Jordan Love ended up coming down with an injury, and that's what ended up forcing Malik Willis to play. And Philadelphia just, they held on. They didn't really like so much of the quality care of the field, and that was what was the difference maker, because the humidity, all the rest of it played a role. But tonight's going to be a different narrative, because Chiefs and Chargers have been the big hype in the AFC West since Mahomes and Herbert have been in the league. Now, the Chiefs do have a standing winning record against Herbert and the Chargers, 7-1. But the difference of it is that what's a big narrative for the Chargers this year is that Justin Herbert now has weapons. They bring back Keenan Allen. They got a dual threat running back that I absolutely like. And the coaching scheme with Jim Harbaugh, people that need to understand about who Jim Harbaugh is and what he's about is Jim is willing to go through the trenches and find ways to win. You look around you in the 10 years that he spent from San Diego to Stanford to the Niners and to Michigan, even though Michigan came off of years where they were just outright horrible. Okay, took that program, built consistency, and made the Big Ten interesting. Because Ohio State, we know, big brand, running the Big Ten, And then you had a couple mixtures of other programs in the middle of it. But Michigan uplifting and getting themselves back into relevancy was what was the big key. And in fact, Michigan had been in the college football playoffs last couple of years once Jim Harbaugh ended up coming into the scene. Now, again, I know with the whole sign stealing, all that other stuff, yes, Michigan ended up getting punished in their wallets. But Jim Harbaugh was all about getting the best recruits, focusing on building consistency and building a culture in Michigan. Same thing when he built a culture post Mike Singletary. Because, yes, they had a great defense, but it was all about changing certain narratives that needed to be fixed, and especially the Vernon Davis thing, because Mike Singletary threw him up and under the bus. And Harbaugh's like, we're going to change that. And what do you know? Vernon Davis looked happy. But it also showed a better version of Alex Smith, who's gone through coaching after coordinators and didn't even look like the best version of himself until Jim got there. Then came a guy from Nevada named Colin Kaepernick, and we all saw with how they were running their offenses there. Jim Harbaugh is aware of the narratives that are surrounding Justin Herbert, because people are like, Justin is a choke artist. He can't play under pressure, can't win a playoff game, threw 4 picks against the Texans, blew the lead against the Jags, which ultimately was associated by Brandon Staley. Let's not get that narrative mixed up. Something about the Chargers, though, this year is really going to surprise some people, because Rashawn Slater out for the season. Yes, it hurts, but that's why you drafted Joe Alt. You needed him to play in his natural position. They will figure that out. By the way, Mekhi Becton, who was listed as questionable with illness, yeah, I just saw him out there in the field. He's playing. You know exactly with how important that these division rival games are. And so I really look at this like this could be a trench game. 3.5 favorable in neutral site. And you know what's funny of it is Chase will get a kick out of this. I actually looked at some of the photos from the stadium. There's a lot more Charger fans in that building than there are Chiefs. You'd be shocked. And usually Kansas City will travel well, but not up in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That may be the only site that may not look like good momentum for the Chiefs. But the Chiefs' question marks are receivers, maybe quality of their offensive line, but that's it. Defensively, Spags and the rest of them can figure a lot of that stuff out. But I feel like that I just have a good feeling that the Chargers are going to come out of the woodwork. I'm not saying they're going to blow out their opponent. They've played well against these two have played great. It's been 7 points or less in the last few matchups. But I do feel like in this game, there's going to be a lot of proven narratives that need to be out there. But I think it's all going to come down to by the leadership of Justin Herbert. And you are going to find that out tonight. Chasing the news.
And now, here we go. Hey, everyone, it's story time. This is the Hot Press.
Oh, yeah, I got a good feeling about this game. And again, isn't that shocking? In Sao Paulo, Brazil, there were a lot more Charger fans than of Chiefs fans. And usually Chiefs travel well. And I was shocked. That's why I was like, okay, maybe Brazil is not Kansas City's friend. But you know what? All I know is that the Chargers needed this. They needed that hype. Because at least it'll feel a lot like a home game, even if they're not at home. So, I got my money's worth on it.
So the NFL CBA collective bargaining agreement is up in the year 2030.
Yep.
And by then we will have 7 teams in the NFL who have gotten new stadiums, including the Cleveland Browns and Brook Park, who plan to play there in 2029. Roger Goodell has made his plans known. By the next CBA, he would like to try to do a division realignment for a lot of people or a lot of teams in the NFL to play closer to the cities that they are close to. So, for example, you would have Detroit, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis all in the same division. And that means that the Lions would go from being an NFC team to an AFC team.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit here and say, I don't know how I like that, but I like the idea of possibly rearranging the divisions because it'll give some of these teams a chance to actually have a shot at the division title.
Well, yeah, but I also do think, too, I look at markets for one of them because, I mean, like we talked about, Texas would have Dallas and Houston and then Kansas City with what their plans are when it comes to, because they're talking about their stadium, too, and whether that's going to be up and in the borderlines of Missouri and Kansas. So I just feel like with that Midwest portion of it for those divisions, that could be a question mark in play.
Yeah.
But I feel like if I was to do that for a realignment, I feel like if you put Kansas City in the South needs help. Okay, they need help outside the Texans and the Jags and the Colts, but it feels like that's kind of the Midwest division. And then you go and you put a team up and into the West Coast that I feel like could be by far competitive, as it already is.
Where would Arizona fit in? Would they fit in with the Texans and Dallas, or would they go to the eastern or the western side of things, go towards where California is going with those
I think
guys?
they would probably fit in more that way because the only one who'd be the outlier is the Pacific Northwest, and that's the Seahawks.
Yeah.
So that may be the only thing I could see. But remember, too, I already talked about this where potentially Utah could be up and on the map. So even if you were to add that team up and into the West, that could help that entire region all across the map right there where there's marketing and you got like so much activity that could be happening all up from there. And it would be good for them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Recently, Cam Hayward, former Pro Bowl / All-Pro defensive tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, says that he's got at least another year left in him after this year, and he wants a pay raise from the Pittsburgh Steelers because he doesn't think that his whole football career he has made enough money for his family and stuff over his football journey. And he has been saying that he has been willing to sit out for a majority of the rest of the season until he gets the money that he wants. And if he doesn't, he's willing to opt out and then go to a team that is willing to pay him a pretty decent penny for the rest of the season and next year to be on that team.
Chase, why does it feel like that everywhere Aaron Rodgers goes, there's drama somewhere in the building? Like, I don't get it. And here's the deal. Cam Hayward, I respect him as a veteran, and he's been around in the league for a long time. But this is what you are going to have to come up against once you paid a lot of these defensive players. Now you've got Jalen Ramsey, you got Darius Slay, and you paid TJ Watt a big contract. And all that this is doing is now causing the Steelers to go backward. I'm not saying Cam Hayward is the be-all, end-all for the Steelers. But what I am saying is that in situations such as this, like, you're coming up in an age. You're not even quite to, like, if you had, like, Derek Harmon, this is why they picked him. Because of something like this could be bound to happen. But you watch Derek Harmon in the preseason, there's still many mechanics that he has to go through and really adjust to be a good run stuffer, but that's why they picked him. And Cam Hayward, like, again, he could have one more year up and into the tank, but I'm not going to break a bank on somebody that's only going to be lasting for up to 2 years, especially when you're on the tail end of your career. So I wouldn't even bother with it. I would honestly move off if I couldn't get it something done. But, I mean, think about what the Bengals did. They gave Trey Hendrickson a pay raise, but we're not going to give you a long term. Somebody else is going to give that to you. They at least did the right thing by quieting the noise and focus on football. This is so noisy with Pittsburgh. And that's why I'm like, you look at that Jets money line, that's why I'm taking the Jets at +3. I
Really?
don't think,
Wow.
yes, because here's the thing. this distraction amongst a team that is young, that is hungry, that wants redemption and payback against Aaron, why wouldn't you want to take that younger team? They're going to be, I'm telling you right now, if I watch those first few drives against Pittsburgh and the Jets look buttoned up more than Pittsburgh, I'm telling you, this is going to be a long, rocky season for the Steelers if this doesn't get handled.
Oh, yeah, I agree. We got two more things that are kind of important here. And one of the most important things that we got to talk about is how quarterback is the most important position on the field in any football team, regardless of how it is. And with a young guy like Anthony Richardson, his agent met with Chris Ballard today about the possibility of his future. They did talk about the possibility of a trade, although they have not requested one. Now, with the possibility of a trade, there's a few potential suitors that have already made some calls to the Colts about potentially acquiring Anthony Richardson. And two of those teams was the New Orleans Saints and the Los Angeles Rams. Because the Rams know that with Stafford getting older, that they need a quarterback of the future. And if you can pair AR with Stafford and then Sean McVay as well, you could potentially have a big, phenomenal threat at quarterback over the next few years.
Well, and you know what? This is why I pointed out about, are the Rams truthfully going to be in contention to trade up to go and maybe get somebody like Garrett Nussmeier or even Pete Klubnik? I just think that you look at how much talent that we do have in the NFL. All you really got to have is just the right guys that know how to unlock their potential. Anthony Richardson should have stayed another year at Florida, because then he would have gotten the experience and I think would have focused more on the simple stuff. And he'd still be a top 5, top 10 pick. But I just don't think right now what I look at with AR in the same way that I look at with DJ Lagway in Florida is take another year to focus on mechanics. There's nothing wrong with that. I know you'll have the potential of being a top rounded pick, but focus on the small stuff, because the minute that you end up getting into the league, it's quick decisions. It's also consistent, sticking to the script type plays you got to make, because the minute you're off script and you can't even complete the simple stuff, you turn into this. But look at some of these coaches in the league. Kevin O'Connell and what he's done with Sam Darnold, Sean McVay, what he's turned Baker Mayfield to getting a payday in Tampa. I mean, there are coaches that can unlock those potentials. So I would say if I'm the Rams, I really have to critically think about this, because they have a young defense, and some of these guys, I mean, they're already pushing to try to win one more before Stafford retires. And if you get a good, healthy offensive line, which offensive coaches can figure this out. So I think it could be the best fit for him, because I even talked about this with Will Levis. Levis has a very good arm, but the problem is he's got to stick to the simple things and maybe change a lot of his mentality when it comes to being comfortable in the pocket. And that will give him the confidence to really throw, and you'll see a complete different quarterback at the end of it.
Yeah, I agree. The last little bit of news that I have is I do believe that we are going to see a influx of defensive coaches get hired in the NFL this next year. I would say that there probably by the end of the season, there's going to be at least 5 teams that need a new head coach. And I do believe out of those 5, there will be 3 defensive coaches that are being hired. Because if you look at the way the NFL is going, the offensive-minded head coach slash play caller is not really panning out as well as people expected or thought. You got guys like the likes of Mike Tomlin, defensive guy, Sean McDermott, defensive guy, and then now DeMeco Ryans, with having 2 years in a row winning a playoff game in the playoffs and having the Texans have a winning record. You're starting to see an influx of these defensive guys that might get opportunities to be a head coach. And one guy that I have seen get a lot of credit, and the guys have come on national television on the NFL Network pleading his case, saying he's got that it factor, and that is going to be Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I think a lot of these young coaches right now that we have up and into the NFL, I mean, that's just kind of the upbringing that we're seeing in the league because it's more pro offense. I mean, I think Jesse Minter's much more well buttoned up, like how I look at Mike McDonald, because I think
That's another guy, defensive guy.
Yes, and here's the thing: they both came from a similar tree, which associated with the Harbaughs. So, and even with Michigan, like Mike McDonald, and you're going to watch that against San Francisco this week. Like Seattle is going to surprise a lot of people with their defense, and even with that dual backfield between K9 and Zach Charbonnet, that's going to be a trench-heavy team. And Darnold, who we've seen in Minnesota, be a lot more buttoned up, but I think this is about as good as you can get it right now for a lot of these coaches. I mean, compared to like Staley was clearly off his skis. There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you looked at Jesse Minter, he's a lot more buttoned up. I think,
and there's been a lot of players. Like I remember watching Good Morning Football one day, and I forgot who it was that came on there, but they had talked about Jesse Minter saying that like I hope he doesn't get any head coaching offers, but if he does, this guy will be a very successful head coach because he's got that it factor. He's got that ability to get players to listen to him with what he's saying, and they're like, I do believe 100% wholeheartedly that he will be a great head coach in the NFL. And
it is
from players on your team talking about a defensive coordinator like that, or just a coordinator in general, says a lot to me because it shows how good of a leader he is on that team and how good he could be.
I think
head coaching
what will really heighten the chances is if that team goes back into the playoffs and they win playoff games. That will heighten his chances for those opportunities of interviews because then people are going to say, okay, this defense is for real. They know how to shut down. They know how to contain. And the leadership as well is going to be another one of those big prime factors. So I think that could be the possibility up from there. But we'll see.
We're going to see an influx of defensive. We're going to see a shift in the NFL. It was all offense for the past 10 years. Now we are going to have the coaching split 50-50 down the middle between offense and defense.
Yes. No, it's definitely going to be a shift. All right. Chasing the Deuce.
And now, here we go. Hey everyone, it's story time. This is the Hot Press.
So while I got Chase up on here, because we were supposed to have a guest here tonight, unfortunately couldn't make it, but no worries, next week's going to be fun. I'm just looking at a lot of these games, and I am very strong on Seattle playing well at home against San Fran because Christian McCaffrey is now dealing, he's saying he feels good. But how good will you feel by the time that you're up and on there on that field? Because with that calf, and he's coming back from that knee injury. So Seattle is going to be a team getting physical. I like the Texans' points only because Alaric Jackson, their offensive tackle, he's out with blood clots. And Matt Stafford, how good does he feel? And especially against a pass rush with Al Shahir and Danielle Hunter, and even with those secondaries of guys like Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter. I really like both of those guys. And I think the Texans are going to be ground and pound on the front. And I know Nick Chubb is getting the start with Joe Mixon absent, but I just think that's a trap for the Rams because I think with the offensive line, because I love the defense. Don't get me wrong. I love that defensive front, but I think it's going to be a lot depending on the offensive line, how much that they can contain. So there's a lot of really good game slates. And I actually have, believe it or not, I did post it up on our social media, but there are 3 games. But we definitely want to get into it with college football because college football week 2 is starting up this weekend. But I'm very, very confident in a lot of these picks here. So don't go anywhere. Take a break. We'll be back here in a second.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
Back here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. I know you all are just waiting 15 minutes for the Chargers and the Chiefs in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I guess we might as well just call our next segment basically On the Chase here because college football week 1. I know you're out there in Columbus and how crazy of an atmosphere that was watching Arch Manning
literally looked just completely
the most viewed college football game.
Yeah,
ever. I couldn't believe it. 16.5 million views. I was like, in a game in which Texas is now nabbed at number 1, but also defending national champs Ohio State at the shoe. Like, that was a game in which, like, Julian Sayin looked good. He didn't look terrible, but he looked good. And I think a lot of it was a very defensive game on both sides. The only problem is that Arch just looked completely out of rhythm, not completing the simple stuff. And I think a lot of that has to deal with pressure on his shoulders. But then I looked at Sark, and I'm like, he's not holding up accountability when it comes to you. Listen, I got to get consistency back in my quarterback. Like, he ain't doing that. And that's the part that I think really drove a lot of Texas fans crazy when it watched Arch, because, yes, it's week 1. He'll have time to figure some things out and get right, because a lot of teams got to get right this next week. But I've just felt like that was just one that was such a terrible performance from Arch. And that's why certain teams really should take their time, because he ain't coming out this draft. He's coming out in 27. So, yeah, I thought that was bad.
Yeah, and there's a possibility Lenore Sellers might go back for his senior season.
And I'm okay with that too.
Just because, like, he may not like who is picking at the top of the draft this year.
Well, people also describe Lenore Sellers like Cam Newton. Like, and you know what? I'm okay with that, because even with South Carolina, the way they played, it looks like there were some adjustments that needed to be made.
Not to mention, you don't see his name in the national media like you do for a lot of these other guys. He's even keel. He's got a great attitude. Yes. He focuses a lot on football. And his coach has said that he is constantly in the film room, breaking down defenses, watching the games, analyzing. What he does is he sits there and watches film for a week straight just so he can know, okay, these guys are going to blitz. When they shift over, the linebacker's coming down, and this one's going to drop into coverage. And that is the makings of a future franchise quarterback right there.
Agreed. And that's why I'm like, if Lenore Sellers is okay with coming back with another year, that's why I'm like, most of these quarterbacks, and I think they're starting to figure that out, even if they go another year in college, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
It does give them a little bit more of that experience. Now here was something that I thought was interesting. So when I watched that Alabama and Florida State game, Alabama, I don't know. Like, Ty Simpson was actually pretty good in the game, but Ryan Williams was just all over the place. And who's that defensive coordinator, Womack, I think who it was. Yeah, I would not even expect him to be employed the next week, because after watching that whole defensive line, like, what the hell was that? And
I laughed so hard.
By the way, he wasn't even passing the ball a ton. You know what's funny is that Thomas Castellanos and Jalen Hurts literally played mirroring images of each other, not passing a ton, very speedster and twitchy, and that was just what that whole look of that game was.
Yeah, I laughed so hard when I saw Alabama lose. I mean, it's nothing, no better feeling than seeing Bama get their comeuppance.
Well, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. I feel a bit for Kalen DeBoer, but this looks ugly. If you cannot get this right, and I know it leaves Bama fans jaded in a sense because of all of like what Bear Bryant and even with what Nick Saban left there at that program. You're dealing with a coach that doesn't really have the voice to just go out, scream out, and really toughen up. And that's why when you look at a lot of these culture type coaches, these are the ones who set the tone. They're the ones who get the consistency in their, like, in the locker room. And I just don't know if Kalen DeBoer really has that. And again, Ty Simpson looked good, but that was not a great performance from the program at all. Like, it was bad.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the, more not so good games of, Alabama. And don't be shocked if, after seeing Alabama fall apart, if Nick Saban comes out of retirement and he's just like, yeah, I need to fix this mess again.
Oh, man. Well, I will tell you, though, and this is also going to be up and on the bet lines on our social media. But there were a bunch of performances. My top 5 that I felt like were very good performances in week 1, John Mateer, I am buying my stock on him because I think his pocket presence and the way he was slinging the ball, I understand who he's playing against the program, okay? Like, you got a lot of these programs that this week is a cupcake week for a lot of these programs. They're playing Panera Bread Tech, Roast Beef State. They're playing all these cupcake games. Okay, this is their get right. But to say John Mateer did not look the role of a quarterback is just outrageous. He's standing there comfortably in the pocket, slinging the ball. He was supposed to be what Arch was supposed to look like, and John Mateer looked really comfortable. I think truthfully, Bryce Underwood looked pretty good, but Justice Haynes, how good did he look running the football for Michigan? Wow. Justice Haynes looked really well, and I'm excited about that because I've seen a lot of that tough ground and pound grit, but to add some speed up and in there, Justice Haynes looks really good. And I think the other performance that was also pretty good. I mean, Thomas Castellanos, I thought, played very manageable to the way that he needed to against Bama. But I think there was also one other running back. I forget too, but they played well. Those were my top 5 up from there. So I want to look at this for a second. So 3 picks for a kick 3 game day. One is I'm taking Oregon against Oklahoma State. Because after what Gundy, did you watch that interview between the two of them, between Gundy and Lanning? No. It's funny as hell. And Gundy was basically taking a shot at Oregon, basically saying, this is a team that just, they spend their money and, all the rest of it. And Dan Lanning's like, hey, listen, our program's not only just based upon, spending our money and spending it wisely up and on players and spots that we know that we need to fill. But when I looked at the latest payroll, I mean, the closest thing that you saw was Mid-Tennessee State, and he literally made a comeback against what Gundy said. And it's 27.5 is the favorite. And I feel like Oregon, Dante Moore, and it's in Autzen. I don't think Oklahoma State realizes what they're getting into. I'm taking the Ducks. I'm taking the Ducks.
I mean, we'll wait and see, but I mean, Dante Moore, he didn't look too bad, but he didn't look good either. So
no, yeah, but I think that is an opportunity for Dante Moore to make those adjustments.
Yeah.
Second game, I think this is going to be an entertaining one.
Yeah.
South Florida against Florida. The
Ooh,
over-under is
yeah.
56.5. I'm taking the under. I feel like after what I watched last week against Boise State, that quarterback for South Florida looked really good. And I don't know if Florida really can be prepared, but I mean, I'm still thinking Florida will come out of that game, but I don't think South Florida is messing around. I think that's a very good program that looks like they're kind of getting themselves right, but I think that's an entertaining one, and it's in the state of Florida. So I think that game, DJ Lagway, I think will have a lot of improvisations, but South Florida, I think it really can give it to Florida this week. I like that pick from here.
That is a decent pick, I will say.
And then finally, I love this pick more than anything. I'm taking Oklahoma over Michigan, 5.5.
Ooh,
Listen,
okay.
but here's the difference. They're in Oklahoma. They're not in Ann Arbor. That may be a difference maker up from there. I could see where Justice Haynes might give the Sooner front a little bit of issues, but knowing Brent Venables, he probably will fix up that front. And I like I said, I was very impressed with John Mateer. And I'm watching two quarterbacks maybe potentially sling the ball with Bryce Underwood and with John Mateer. And I would probably not have made this pick if it was in Ann Arbor. But because it's in Oklahoma and the Wolverines are on the road, that might be a little more of a tough competition for the Wolves, for the Wolverines.
Yeah.
I ain't going to lie to you.
I could see I can see it.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, especially with a rookie QB too. So
yes, and again, I think both of them looked pretty good. In my opinion, there's still more room for improvement, but I think again, I've really bought my stock into John Mateer. I'm not even joking. I've really bought it because I just think the kid has a very good, sharp presence in the pocket, and he can complete the simple stuff. So I like it.
I do too.
All right. Good stuff. It is a good week. Good week this week. Got some college football action up this weekend, but we also know we got another NFL game tonight. Chiefs Chargers in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Really excited about it. I got a good feeling about the Chargers tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. College football action tomorrow, and then a whole Sunday slate for one. And we got Monday with the Vikings and Bears. So I'm excited for all of these games. It's going to be a jam-packed weekend. Cannot wait to see what the results will be up and in this one. But we got to head out. With Chase and myself here up and onto the show, have a great stacked weekend of football play. Can't wait to see what happens up from here. We'll have more for you guys here next week on the show. Take care, everyone.